Hi there, everyone. We are live. That pop up that opens your screen is in Portuguese or in
Oh,
English. You see
sorry.
that appear a pop up screen here for you.
Hold on. I get lost you.
We
So
are live. We are live. Huh?
yeah, I know. I'm just trying to make sure that so you're saying you can see this, right?
Wait. I can add the see like now everybody's is seeing. Oops.
Okay.
You can add and then I have to add to be for everyone. So
Okay.
yeah, you just add, and when you are ready, you say like, "I'm good to go," and then I will just add here, and then we go.
Okay, perfect. I think I'm good to go then.
Cool. So yeah, um, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for having me on. I am and for anybody that's watching, excuse my lack of podcast knowledge or savviness with these tools. I'm definitely still getting familiar with the way that all this stuff kind of runs, but I think we got it covered now. So today we are going to be talking about Mario and Q Star, or more broadly, Q learning models. And my name is Hana Mori. I'm the founder and CEO of AI Marketing Flow. Um, and so, yeah, let's just get into it. All right. So, a little bit of background on me. Um, I kind of have a pretty crazy background, I'd say, in the sense it's a little bit more non traditional. So, I've been doing SEO for pretty much my entire life, entire career. I got into this at 19. I've been working with, you know, agency side, a lot of different types of enterprise clients and things like that over the last decade, and transitioned into being more of a technical SEO at a certain point in my career, which led me to coding. And I've sort of become somewhat of a soft sell programmer and software engineer. It's been working on a number of different things in like the technical SEO space. Uh, and so this year really became like a full circle moment for me because actually, when I initially started my journey down the technical SEO path, one of the first sites that I actually performed really well for was socialmediaethics.net, which ranked number one for social media ethics in 2010. And it was just a blog of me basically putting up philosophy papers, like how would Kant feel about Twitter and that type of thing, for a class I was in at the time. And so I definitely always had a focus on thinking about more of like the philosophical and ethical side of how like modern technology is sort of impacting our world. And then as we moved into things with modern day, it really just felt like a perfect synthesis for me to sort of bring everything from my background together, whether it's coding or SEO or ethics or philosophy, and kind of just output it into one thing. And then to bring it back even around even more, I'm also a fire spinner, attend a lot of Burning Man events and that type of thing. And so I think a lot of the uh, there's a lot of comparisons to spinning fire and using AI. And I feel like, having the will is one thing, but having the control and the ability to actually do it safely is a whole other thing. So, like I said, it all pretty much ties together despite being a more colorful picture in terms of a resume. So, how does this play into my company? And uh, essentially, this year, I didn't really um, it took me some time to figure out the exact ground of where I wanted to go with the way the world was changing. But it was pretty clear early on that there are a lot of parallels between, again, my past history and how I look at SEO and ethics and that sort of thing in that landscape, and then the way that AI was evolving, and even more directly that SEO actually is very integrally tied into the way that AI are developed. And we'll get into that a little bit more further into the presentation. But AIMF essentially is just supposed to be a a group that is coming from an SEO background, but is hoping to have a mission where we can shape a larger part of this picture beyond marketing in terms of how AI are used in ethical ways, whether it's the way that humans are interacting with them directly, or even the way that we develop these AIs themselves and build them as they become more intelligent. But that being said, there's definitely a lot to be concerned about, I think, with the modern day perspective on, what's happening with the world. It's just I think people are kind of falling into two different camps where they either really know about it or they really don't know much, and they're kind of just maybe afraid to look at it too hard because they're, it brings up worry over their future, what's going to happen to the world and all that type of thing. And I definitely can appreciate that perspective because from a really young age, I often had a lot of fears specifically around the movie Fantasia. And I couldn't really understand why when I was young. But as I got older, I realized that I think it's actually a perfect metaphor for the way that AI kind of work in our world. Specifically in the clip of Mickey and the Wizard, where he animates the broom to do his chores for him. And if you've seen Fantasia, you know that those things don't exactly work out the way that he's expecting. In this clip here, you can kind of see a better illustration of it where, Mickey being the one that's interested in AI tries to use the magic hat to do the chores. Initially, everything's good. But then the AI starts to do more than he realizes, and he realizes that he can't actually take this thing apart. It's on its own, it's automating, and only the wizard can come in and actually resolve this issue. So, again, just kind of bringing it back, I think I've had a really long fascination with thinking about technology and this whole story, but I didn't expect for a long time in my career that I was necessarily going to actually become a part of the industry. Because from my perspective, pretty much, being in search engines, obviously we were working with large scale machine learning systems that were based on algorithms that would eventually evolve into, quantum AI systems, or what Google are using now. But at the time I'm thinking, okay, I'm just a marketer. Like, I'm not really like a developer. I don't know if I'm ever going to be anywhere near that space. It's really interesting. I'd love to do it, but I don't know if that's going to fit for me. But then this year, with things coming around, it became a lot more clear that actually AI and search engines are pretty much a very close tied discussion point. There's to begin off with this, you can kind of just look at the way the GPT models are working in general. They're based on text training, where they've shown increasing and expanding language capabilities to sort of understand what they are looking at. And the transformer architecture, which is the T in GPT, is what is allowing them to really take these past language processing technologies to a whole new scale, taking it for where we can actually, generate content directly out of our chats as we've been using. And you've seen, if you've been working with GPT, Claude, Bard, etc. this year. But more specifically, how does this tie into the algorithm? So this slide's probably would speak more to people that are SEOs. Obviously, they're going to understand what's saying more historically to like the way that they've been working with the algorithm. But to break it down a little bit for people that aren't as familiar with SEO, Google's algorithm is a large language model that has been around since the late 90s and has been in a cat and mouse game with SEOs where they develop some smarter way to do their algorithm. We figure out ways to outsmart them. They find ways to negate us. And it's sort of like has eventually evolved into this this sort of timeline where you can see SEOs attempting to do things that are a little bit more on the gray hat side of things or a little bit less by the guidelines, and then Google punishing us with different updates or rewarding us depending on your perspective. But in the process of this game where we were trying to outsmart Google, Google's outsmarting us back and forth, there was a point in time where this actually started to play into the AI space more. And as these content updates started to increase the ability of the LLMs to process things, here's where we see the birth of OpenAI in 2015. GPT being created in 2018 is something that was probably a result of people studying the past Google models that had been up to this point. And then similar to the way that it was before working, where the SEOs were on one side and Google was on the other, and we are the two ends of the feedback loop improving the system, OpenAI sort of stepped in as another layer of that, where they're creating their own system similar to what Google has. And Google, upon seeing this, then iterated on that model to create a massive algorithm update called BERT, which was is essentially what is allowing GPT to work as well as it can, because instead of a large language model only being able to process data from left to right and being able to understand the words that were closest to it in terms of how to understand the context of what's being said, it could actually read in both directions. So that really opened up things for large language models and their processing. This then led into the EAT algorithm, expertise, authority, and trust, which is more focused for Google's end of trying to make sure that their content that's being ranked is the best and is the most contextually evaluated using algorithms like this. GPT then, upon seeing what Google was doing, essentially, again, that feedback loop happened where they saw what Google did, iterated on that further, and that led to GPT-2 and then GPT-3 going mainstream and being released to the public November of last year. Through this spring, we've then had, more things going on with GPT continuing to build itself out and Bard, Google really becoming active in the game as well. So I know that one's kind of a lot, but at the end of the day, all you really need to know for the TLDR on this is that Google's algorithm and the way that searchers were using it and their crawlers were using it to find information to make Google work for you over the past, as long as it's been around, all of those algorithm features and things that I learned from those pieces are what allowed us to build the technology that are AIs. So from an SEO's perspective, if they have been studying this algorithm for, over a decade or a large portion of their life, they would be more equipped to understand the AI systems because they are very similar in nature to the way that Google has been working. Taking this back to SEO then, here's just a general overall picture of sort of the landscape of what we think about when we talk about SEO. There's a lot of different pieces to it. I think these days, the most important ones are probably going to be more on the technical and video side, as well as on page, but that remains to be seen as far as how it will play out in the search space. But at least in this particular moment in time, we can definitely say that from the technical SEO side, the way that these AI models are integrated with them is that the technical crawlers that are Google's crawlers called Googlebot that are sent out to help organize and understand websites that they can be ranked in Google search are the same crawlers that technical SEOs use to study and optimize websites for this side of the algorithm. So essentially, when we understand the technical SEO algorithm, we're actually looking at the first layer of an AI model, which would be ingestion. So the model is collecting data to then put into some sort of format or algorithm. Similar to the way that technical SEOs may scrape content or build scraping models to create strategies, or Googlebot is currently scraping content. And in the long run, I think that this might actually be something where our current role as technical SEOs is to make sure that content is crawlable. But in the future, it may be even more of an important thing to understand how to make content completely not crawlable. Whether that's putting things behind Cloudflare logins to protect them, or even coding things to be unscrapable. I think that remains to be seen exactly how that's going to work. But definitely an interesting thing to point out, just because I think, with the way that AI is coming into this piece of the puzzle, we're not just considering like, how do we make this the best for being ingested? We're looking at being able to protect ourselves as well, I think, from a certain extent in the future. So before I go too much further, I just wanted to slow things down and kind of bring this back to connect to this picture here. So I talked about before how I think video, technical, and on-page are probably the most important pieces of the puzzle right now. Obviously, depending on your niche, if you are a super local client, that may not be true. But more from an algorithm perspective, you can see the way that Google is kind of looking at this with the way that they've rolled out the AI systems within Bard itself. And so here we can actually see that what I'm trying to show is the technical being the ingestion part of the equation, wherein this would be the on-page LLM factors in the equation. So understanding how to have the most optimal content is going to be much more important in terms of SEO strategy because of those increased standards that Google's been putting in. And then lastly, video content, because we know from the way that TikTok's performing and pretty much all marketing models are moving towards video and generative video. So the more that any of these independent networks, whether it's, Google or TikTok or Facebook and Instagram, like they're all just trying to get video content so that they can use it to train future models to continue to create more content. So the way that I'm expecting this to work right now is that Bard would send out Google Extended to do the ingestion. It would run it through a filter with the higher algorithmic standards on the on-page side. And then if there are video results, those might be slightly favored in terms of if someone's using Bard and they're getting a result, how is your content going to be ranked inside an AI system or inside of Bard? In the long run, this may even reflect back the other direction, where if we are using Bard and Google is giving us a certain result that's ranked number 1 for that result currently in regular Google, and in Bard, every time Google gives that response to users, they're like not into it. It's not working for them. It's not what they want. I'm wondering, and we don't know for sure yet, but my question is now, would that be something where that would be a feedback loop back to the search results? So if people don't like your Bard answers or the way that your citations are working there, would that decline your rankings in regular search? Again, it remains to be seen, but a good question to ask, I think, at this time. So in the long run, though, I think the next question a lot of people are asking me is really, okay, but like you're saying all this stuff, but Gemini seems like we don't even know what it is. Bard's barely on the map, right? Like most people are using GPT-4 or Claude or Perplexity or like other options. So why does it even matter like how this is working in Google and what is really happening here? And so essentially, I think that what Google's going for right now using this model is that they're trying to make sure that they can sort of have their algorithm be like a safeguard to identify the best possible responses in an AI system. So it's pre-qualifying its responses by using direct citations from search results to show that if these things are ranking in search, then we know that people like them or they're good answers for things. So it's probably a good response for Bard, sort of a QA system. But in the long run, I think that even if we're saying that these other systems are going to have, like GPT is obviously directly tied to Bing, currently not able to crawl, I heard yesterday. Some plugins may still be working for that, but GPT-4 itself is no longer able to scrape websites directly, and neither can Claude or Bard. So I think that at this point, it seems like people are saying that they're moving away from having things where these AIs are going to be crawling, but it seems like all the plugins, if you look into GPT-4, are mostly based around Google search. Like no one's optimizing for Bing search right now. It doesn't matter how tied Bing is to GPT or Microsoft or how much they want to make that a huge thing. Like nobody seems to care because at the end of the day, Google does have a better algorithm for search. So I think in the long run, no matter what AI is your choice of AI, even if it's not Bard or Gemini doesn't end up being as good as we think, Google results and SEO are still going to matter in all ingestion models for any AI because 90% of them are probably going to use Google search. in terms of how they scrape data, if we're being honest. I'm sure I don't want to get sued by any of these companies or anyone building tools right now. So I will say that's my guess. It's not a certainty. I'm not basing this in any specific truths other than like plugin trends of what I'm seeing up to this date, which is December of 2023. But yeah, I would speculate that Google will still remain relevant for a good long while, regardless of how they're playing in terms of like Bard and Gemini right now. It still is important. So before we go any further, I wanted to stop and sort of see if we could get into some questions, because I know that was quite a lot, and we're about to jump straight into Q learning models, which might break some people's brains until I get to the Mario parts. So yeah, anything that I can answer off the top from this beginning part?
Yes, I have, I don't know, around 10 questions, but yeah, I think, 2 or 3. Yeah, about the last one, you said that, like, because AI tools, they don't crawl directly. So how do they get the content if they don't crawl directly? Like, I know that you are like feeding them like on the graph before, but I thought they crawl like.
Well, so it's been switching because there was in this year when GPT 3.5, I think it was still 3.5 then, in like May, they had it connected to Bing for a while directly. If I don't know if you're using it then, but that was a thing briefly, and then it was reverted back because there were reports that said Bing was some sort of issues with the users. There wasn't much details on like exactly what happened, but people were like having some sort of problem. So they took it off, and then they added like some different variations over the summer where you could do GPT with Bing as its own separate piece, but that's like kind of all it could do. And then they started introducing the plugins, which some of them had browsing. So I think it was kind of like it was there and then it went away and then it kind of came back for a while over the summer, and it had been a key feature that we were using. And then in the latest update, when they went to Vision, they had integrated it so that Bing, Vision, meaning Dolly and all that stuff, voice, all those features of GPT were all inside of GPT-4 as a base model. So you could just use 4 and search the web. But as of this week, that doesn't seem to be true anymore. And I don't know why. I would speculate that maybe it has to do with more of the fallout from the Thanksgiving fiasco with OpenAI, or repercussions of that situation. But yeah, it's an interesting thing that's going on because the plugins seemed like they still can. So I'm not really sure what their goals are to restrict it in certain ways and not in others. Other than maybe because of the other reports that are coming out saying that GPT-4 is degrading in quality more. I'm imagining that's because of the amount of uses, like people using the platform. So maybe they moved Bing out of GPT-4 because they wanted to reduce bandwidth strain on GPT-4 as like a base model if they're like siloed. Again, I'm kind of like really speculating and I don't have any visuals to explain this better, but that may be some of what's going on right now, but we don't really have a whole lot of insight on why they're making the decisions that they're making. But I can tell you that from my personal perspective, I don't think Bing should have ever been a part of it to begin with. I don't think Google should be attached to it at all. I think people should have to build independent systems to scrape and then have AI doing work on top of it, because it's kind of a waste of AI's bandwidth to be scraping, if you think about it, because we have like programs that can scrape. So we don't need to use the vast amount of power and electricity usage that AI uses just to do things that we can do with regular programs. So that may be another reason why they're kind of aligning. Maybe that's what they're thinking as well.
Okay, so yeah, I got it. So like you have like crawlers. The crawlers will remain, the spiders, and all that infrastructure. and then the AI will be like on top of that to process the information and give like the responses.
Yeah, I think so. So like this is how it initially seemed like Google setting it up. They're going back, like it feels like a lot of these companies are like in the past, I think when we think about these things, we're imagining that these people have had like keynote meetings and like strategizing on it for years, right, before they're putting out these big things. But that's not the case right now because everybody, like maybe they have been thinking about it for years, but I think everything's moving so fast that a lot more of the way these companies' strategies are playing out is probably going to be more reactive than proactive in some ways because it's kind of like, based on public sentiment or based on as we're testing these things in the field right now and seeing how they're responding. So as we go forward, I think the most critical thing I can say to take away from this is like, no matter what you think you know about AI, even if you've been like, oh, I've been looking into this all year, I know so much, I remember this, I know all this stuff. Like, you gotta think, okay, I know all this stuff about AI, but then you got to be researching like that week, that day, if you're going to talk about it that week, that day, because everything is so fluid. It literally could change by the hour, even with some things. So I think that's the biggest lesson is like, you got to stay agile and really just understand what's happening at that time period and be able to interpret what that means quickly, rather than trying to like memorize like every piece of history on stuff. Um, but that being said, I've enjoyed being able to sort of uh, build out my understanding of these concepts over time, and so I think it's similarly like the way I'm presenting them is kind of evolving in response to all those things as well.
Yeah. Okay. My last one. My last one. This I always want to get this question. Like will because I always thought that on Google you have kind of a positive feedback loop. So like people is like producing more content because they know that like Google will kind of reward you, like putting you on the first position at Google and driving a lot of traffic. So people start like building a lot of content and putting out on the internet, and I think it's kind of a like positive feedback loop that I don't think it exists with ChatGPT, like 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 there is yeah, you can attribute a little bit, but not directly. Like do you think that ChatGPT in a sense it's like killing content, or people will still like produce a lot of content in order to rank on ChatGPT? Like do you see that there is like any kind of impact, like the way things are organizing right now in terms for like creators?
I think that with GPT, they're kind of going on like the model of build within our systems, and then that's how you can kind of become like important in that space. So they offer you right now the option to become a developer through the plugin space. I'm pretty sure the waitlist on that is like 10 years at this point. And there's probably certain types of developers that like wouldn't qualify. So I haven't really tried to move into that space, but I think that's like maybe one way like that they're allowing like creators, even though that's not really the same. And then another one is going to be the agents, because they're having like letting people build agent models of um, like more advanced AIs that can do specific tasks and are trained on proprietary data. So that'll probably be more of like how people would express their creativity as being an influencer in the GPT space. There's no like current citation model. They had talked about it, I think, at the very beginning, but it feels like GPT is going the opposite direction. So if you go in here and let's just do a quick demo. So actually, I need to go to my other Chrome window. So if I go to chat versus Bard, Um, this is going to be interesting. So sort of a simple one, right? Bard, let's see. I think right now it's generally working where Bard is going to give you more, is going to give you the actual citation with Google Maps and everything. So like, but this is probably just scraping from Google Maps. It's just that it doesn't give you any reference to like where it gets its information. And Google Bard by default, like also because these things are integrated, but let's say I didn't ask a map question. Let's say I asked, can you tell me how to keep a Christmas tree fresh in my home where it's a dry climate? So if I ask the same question here, again, it's probably going to give me some really good steps, and they might even be identical. No, they're a little bit different, but yeah, pretty much like, as you can see, there's a citation with every response from Google, and they're never showing up over here. So I don't think there's any way that GPT is currently showing us where these things are going to be related to SEO as directly. But every time GPT is, even though it's not like live scraping, GPT's creators are refreshing its index and updating it with data that they're scraping separately. So if they're scraping Google also, which they probably are, like they're going to just end up with almost the same result minus the good citation, which is where I think maybe once this gets better, people might end up using Bard or Gemini more. Well, but it kind of remains to be seen. And it also kind of might break down to be like based on the user themselves. Like people might just be like hardcore, I just want to Google, I don't want to use these ever. And then other people might never learn how to Google and only do this, or search in TikTok, or all sorts of different things. But yeah, just to sort of illustrate that.
Thank you. Yeah, great answer.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of these questions, the answer is like, it depends, or we don't know. But luckily, I've been in SEO for 13 years, so I'm really good at that, because that's pretty much how it works with SEO as well. But okay, let's go back to the presentation. So now let's get to the fun stuff. We moved past all the boring SEO stuff. All the SEO people that are watching the stream, I'm sure you've loved it. But I would like to get a little bit more into something slightly more fun, which is breaking our brains with some Q algorithm models. But more directly actually understanding why did everybody freak out about Q-star? What is it? Why is it important to the future of AGI and all that jazz? So if you are a big nerd like I am, then you probably spent your Thanksgiving staring at the news feed in your phone, trying to understand what was happening, and then going on Reddit threads to try to learn about Q-star immediately after that, and speculating. But I think that until Amazon dropped their new label with the Q model, I don't know that we had as much definitive proof of what was going on. But now that Amazon's making it known, I think that's a pretty good indication that the Q-star and Q-learning models that we're hearing speculation on as it relates to GPT, which led to Sam's ousting, we think, right, as far as we know, these things are actually based on two different algorithms, which are A-star search and Q-learning algorithms. So the first one, A-star search, pretty simply, but don't try to memorize this too much because I'm going to get into more detail next. But simply put, A-star search helps agents find the optimal path to reach a goal, and Q-learning helps them understand trial and error interactions to make good decisions in different situations or in an entire environment. So the easier way to understand an A-star search algorithm is this visual here. What's the shortest path to travel from A to Z? And these numbers are the heuristic values that are actually calculated in that algorithm to see which the optimal path is. In the context of Mario, this might be somebody running a model over a Mario Kart map and optimizing for the fastest possible route to take around the map to, get the high score, win the game, etc., etc. Q learning then, again, focuses on the trial and error. So similar to a video game, it learns, you don't necessarily know what you're doing when you go into a video game. You kind of just get in there, and maybe there's this tutorial, maybe there's not. Some people like to do those. People just like to start playing and just find out. I think I'm probably the second one. So it's a lot of trial and error where you're sort of figuring out, okay, these are my controls. There's an enemy. I think I can slash them with a sword or jump on them or whatever I need to do. You understand the reward system. If you're alive, you're doing a good job. If you're dead, probably not. And then over that time, you're sort of building a strategy. So AI can do the same things. And I can illustrate this best by then going to my fantastic demo that I created for this. So let me get back to, how did I lose those? One second, I'm just gonna actually pull this up directly. So what happens when I try to demo on the same tab that I had pre-planned? Here we go. So how does this work in Mario? So again, hopefully you don't get too bored with it, but I wanted to sort of show like how a player might be if they're first going through the game, or an AI might be where it hasn't had any supervision or like tutorials to really know what to do. Like it knows how to jump and move, but it doesn't know what these elements are it's interacting with. Like Mario didn't know that he needed to be big to break the blocks right there. So coming up to tunnels, again, doesn't really know things. Okay, I tried that tunnel, nothing happened. Skips these two, killing some of the mushrooms. And then when it comes to this tunnel, Mario actually goes down, finds more coins, and is understanding, okay, this is probably a good tunnel for me to hit every time because it's got a lot of coins in it. But if I come up out of this tunnel, then I end up in this situation where didn't time that exactly right, and now Mario is dead. So going back through and playing it again, if it's an AI system, it would be learning, okay, so I'm not going to hit those bricks until I'm Big Mario. Then I can break them. And also as Big Mario, I can stand on the side of a brick. I don't need to add that middle one. I don't need to worry about these pipes, hitting on the mushrooms. And then instead of, maybe from an A-star perspective, instead of A-search perspective, instead of going down the pipe, he goes over and he realizes, okay, well, there's mushrooms here, but if I just let them fall off a cliff, then that's fine, and I can just get this other power up over here. So it's kind of like, from an AI's perspective, it'd be the same idea as having repeated playthroughs where you're like slightly improving and learning the elements as you go through the game. This is the same thing that then AIs will be able to do using a Q model. So going back to my presentation. Again, the A-star would be looking at shortest path. So if we know, okay, don't bother with those pipes, just keep going, hit pipe number 2 to make sure that you get the most coins. You want to go towards the flag, which is on the right, et cetera, et cetera. And then from the Q side of things, it's allowing us to really understand like all the different things that an AI algorithm would be able to learn, even within a 2D model, by using this type of system, because you can see all the different complicated things that like Mario is able to interact with when he's in the environment. There's stuff coming at him. There's different types of objects. There's different rules. There's timing. It's got a lot of decisions actually going on in the game, even though it feels like it's a very simple model. And then to explain this in more of a technical perspective, this is an example of the way a Q-learning system would work. And you can see there's Mario. The environment is the level he's on. The state is just like how he's doing. So if he's alive, big, small, Super Mario, etc. And then the action is going to be what he's actually doing. And then the reward is the result. So if he comes up, jumps on a mushroom, then he knows that like he gets a coin out of it or Mushroom's dead, then he knows like, okay, everything's good for Mario. So he can continue to do that every time a mushroom comes around. He knows that to get on them because it's going to help him out with something. And then this is more of, again, the technical perspective of it. So some gamers have actually, like, the reason I chose Mario as an example is first because it's simple, but then also because gamers actually did this model. This is something that was a study where people were using AI systems to basically do speedrun competitions to see who could get the best score based on training different models of AIs to play the game. So it could be an interesting perspective on the future of gaming and or, I don't know, just like kind of how these systems are currently being deployed in smaller frameworks. And again, the improvement on these is going to be that GPT models are sort of fixed systems. They can only sort of refer to the data that they already have. They can't really adopt or learn. They're kind of staying within the context of that conversation. Versus Q models would be more like an agent where it can remember the past interactions it's had with the user, remember their likes and dislikes, and how to better solve the problem of what they're doing on a daily basis. So some key questions to ask here, I think, just more broadly, as for us to ask ourselves, are going to be, how are these things actually related, and what other ethical concerns would we want to consider when we're building these models? Because we don't want to make a game or a system that can basically beat us at everything, and then put it in some place where it has really serious, world stakes of the implications of how it's working. So I think maybe it is a good time for us to be taking the gaming approach and testing out these operations in these much more safe environments to understand better how to roll them out into actual AI systems that would affect the real world. So I have a few more then also to sort of show a real world example of this that is not as terrifying as, maybe some of the things that we're imagining when we talk about AIs that can learn. But one way of doing this now in an easier model that maybe is more applicable to most people is going to be through TikTok marketing. And so I think there's some pretty obvious metrics that we know about TikTok. If you've been using the platform, you probably know that, how to do, and you are a creator, then you probably noticed there's certain ways to create content that's going to just generally get more engagement. Like if you're using certain types of filters or elements that are more engaging, if it's something viral, like if there's a new Christmas sticker that's really relevant to this time of the year and or a New Year's thing, as well as having trending audio. Like these are all things that we can intuit just by posting content and seeing how it performs and looking at the way the platform's metrics work. But how would you actually do this? So I am a TikToker for fire spinning stuff. And so pretty much I've been working on different models for how I would implement this myself. Depending on your niche, obviously you want to start with like the same, I think, perspective as like an SEO, where you're doing research, you're looking at who's competing or ranking or performing well in any given niche and seeing what trends you could use that might fit better into your videos. This doesn't mean that everybody should go out and Mr. Beast and make like videos that say like, I did this and use the exact caption and be like crazy. I don't think the TikTok algorithm is going to work the same way as YouTube's before. I think it's going to be more based on the way that you're working as an overall creator. So like the longevity of your videos, how much like people are engaging, because it's less about having a video in TikTok that people are going to go back and watch a bunch, I think, than it is having something that's just catching people at the time that it's going out in that brief window where it's relevant. And then if you can do promotions on those posts, obviously that helps with optimizing as well. So how have I done this? I have basically just built a little model to analyze how my poi performances work. And I can spin poi either with LEDs or I can use fire. So LEDs are obviously a little easier for me to shoot since I live in a home that doesn't have a yard or flame-proof area for me to do fire. But I know that like I can crank out a whole bunch of LED videos and I'll only get X amount of engagement. If I go out and shoot an hour of fire content and cut that up, all those fire videos are going to get a way higher amount of engagement. And if I promote them, whether or not I promote them, but especially if I promote them, I'm going to get a significantly increased follower point than if I'm just doing an LED promotion, because fire is more eye-catching and engaging and obviously is, you know, just going to work better. So some actual examples of that are then going to be, let me get out of here. So I've got, this is an example of an LED video. As you can see, good engagement, but, and obviously like collab with the actual artist. So pretty cool, you know, it looks good, but if I go up to my next one, you know, this is going to be a little bit more engaging because when you are scrolling through TikTok and you're seeing a bunch of different things and your ADD brain's going, you're probably going to more be caught on the fact that that girl looks like she's almost on fire and I want to know what happens next. Then you're going to care about a lot of cool, pretty lights, unless you happen to be somebody that is a part of this niche and understands what's happening in this video. To take it even further, while this one is probably going to catch people that just like, oh, sick, fire, like they're just like looking at this, engaging. The next video then where I'm spinning 4 on fire is going to be more of like the thing that really is getting both sides, because it's going to impress the people that are just excited that there's fire at all. And it's going to impress the people that are actually good at this, because there's like not very many people in the world that can spin 4 on fire. And I have not found any other girls so far. So like, I'm not saying I'm the only one. I'm just saying I don't know any other ones right now. So like, it is a unique, it adds the cachet or the uniqueness to the video where this is obviously going to have far greater engagement and follower impact across the 3 different videos. So if I want to go out and optimize and go back to the feedback loop concept, I know that all I need to do is go out and shoot 4 poi videos in a festival environment, and that's going to get me the best return. Although again, not as easy to shoot because I have to wait for there to be a music festival. I have to have proper setup and safety for me to be able to spin there. I have to be invited to spin. You know, like there's factors that play into me being able to create these videos, this content. But I do think this one small example that really is a good illustration of how a Q learning system might be able to work in the future, where maybe instead of having to do where I'm posting all these individually editing them all myself, like hand editing them, an AI system would be able to understand from my giant library of content that I'm feeding it, okay, like every 3 days we're going to do a 4 poi on fire video. Every 7 days we'll do a 4 poi on fire video. Every 3 days we'll do a regular fire video. The rest are going to be LEDs, like kind of a better cadence for how we can disperse the content based on how much I can shoot and when. So and then yeah, I think the last thing here is, and when we talk about this stuff, it's really just how does this come down to ethics, and what is it that we can really do to make sure that these systems are being deployed in places that are going to make sense? Because at the same time, as much as I can look at a Q model and say, okay, I know that the more I can put out the most, like arguably the most dangerous content, which is me doing 4 things on fire at a time, even though I know how to do it safely, that gets me the most engagement. So I should do even more videos that are extremely dangerous looking. But then on the ethics side, I actually have to think, okay, every time I promote a video, if I look at my engagement on my followers, if I let TikTok pick the audience, I'm getting tons of engagement with like high school boys, which is, you know, whatever the case may be there with like how TikTok's organizing their segments. But from my end of things, I'm thinking responsibly. I don't know if I want to like encourage a bunch of 14 to 18-year-olds that like they should go try to do what I'm doing in these videos. So like just because the Q learning model says that I should be putting out 4.5 videos all the time doesn't mean that I should be saturating the internet with that from like an ethical perspective. So one explanation is to sort of how you got to consider those things. And then I think, you know, again, just we want to make sure that we're not taking it too far. So I know that there's new stuff coming out now where they can do like ByteDance, where they're saying all TikTok dancers are going to get replaced because it's just going to be animations. But I feel like that's maybe true, but at the end of the day, it's, to an extent, maybe that'll happen. But TikTok's also forcing people to put on their video if it was AI generated. And I think that at the end of the day, people will be able to do more quickly with their own bodies if they actually have the talent than people would be able to animate. So it probably maybe would have a slight impact, but at the end of the day, it just allow the dancers to enhance themselves to make themselves look even better with the skills that they actually have. So maybe not so much a concern about job displacement there, but again, just like things that you definitely have to be concerned about when you're looking at really applying these types of structures to more practical everyday tasks. So that is the end of my presentation. So I'm going to go back to the video so I can see you. But yeah, do you have any questions, or what do you think would make sense from here? Did we get anything from the audience?
Yeah. I find it like super cool. So some questions about the Q star, because like the way you said, like I have like the A search and the Q learning. Mm-hmm. So what I research is that like they will be like basically like as smart as humans or closely smart as humans, but like the way you explain, I was thinking like they will be able to do things for the first time. For example, like I want to build a rocket that can, put us in Mars, or like can put us in, I don't know, any other planet. And I want to, like build a civilization in Mars, like with a, atmosphere, like, like if I input this question to the Q star, like they will give me like a step by step of everything I need to do.
I mean, if someone had already like taught it, then, because I mean, it's like, I don't know. I think that it'll have like base knowledge, but the idea is more that it can learn from its past past interactions. So it's like if that Q star system was trained on like for example, there's like something called the Earth ship, or like they made in like the 90s, they trapped a bunch of scientists in like a little dome in Arizona and tried to make like a fake environment inside of like a biosphere where everything was being created inside that atmosphere and that environment. And I think that's like the only test of like a closed system that's like as robust that's happened so far. So I would imagine it would be like if the Q star system had all the data from that model, then it could learn what to do differently and to do it better. But it would still require you to like, it's the idea of Q learning is about the fact that it can learn, not the fact that it would know how to do things that have never been done before. Like you'd have to prompt it in a way where it would learn something before it could be able to do things. I think it's less about the inception and more about like it wouldn't, I think it's more of like the idea of if Bob in Detroit like teaches Q star how to, or like teaches a Q model how to do something like intricately fix old Ford cars that are like not even on the map anymore, that like 2 people in the world want to know about, then those 2 other people are going to love that GPT that Bob made because like it already knows. Like they don't have to reteach it how to use these old engines. It knows already. It's just built in because it remembers what Bob talked to it about. So it's more like that's the idea, is that like people will collectively be able to feed into a system that then has more inherent knowledge. And so maybe because of that, like if you had like 100 different climate scientists or astronaut people or people of different disciplines that all, or maybe 1,000 that all like talked to these models and came up with their own ideas, and then you had a couple like 6-year-olds who just made stuff up that they thought sounded cool, maybe somehow that model would be able to be like, actually though, those 6-year-olds who were just making up stuff actually kind of had a good idea. Because you never know. It's like kind of like chaos theory when you're introducing all these different points, but that's maybe where more of the magic of like inception of ideas would come from, would be of like it amount of it like combining all of those different perspectives and like learning pieces together. But like I don't know, because like I don't imagine that it would just be something where anybody can have a chance to influence it. I'm sure that they would have more control from the OpenAI side, so hard to say. But there probably are going to be more open source models that are like this that are coming out that may work more like that. And in a weird way, Google kind of works like that, because like Google's algorithm, every time people are using, like clicking on things that are good matches for a search result, they're reinforcing that that keyword is a good keyword. So in a way, like if 100 people in America all think that this is a good result for a certain keyword, and then that product gets released in a different country, people in that other country probably would get that result because everyone in America has already reinforced it's a good result. So it's like kind of like more like that side of things of how I could explain it in modern day.
Yeah, because I understand like there's you can split like improvements in, you can split improvements in different like ways, but a way I like to look at this is that like you have continuous improvement. So like you pick something from point A, and to continue iteration, like you go to point B, and you have improvement that's called like a breakthrough. When you are like flat, but and then you make like a huge discovery that goes like to point like B.
Yeah.
Like the way you explained like Q star is really 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 good at what we call like PDCA, like like linear improvement. So it can like quickly like with key and lay like go to that. But I'm not seeing like the way you explain like AI being capable of breakthroughs. Like coming up with something that's so disruptive that can change the entire landscape.
Well, I think it's more like you have to think about when everybody got all freaked out. It's probably more from like the societal impact sort of side, because they're not freaking out about like this model's not performing well. They're freaking out about like this model's performing so well that all of society will like not have a job, and then it will collapse. Like that's like more the concern, I think, than it is like that people finding the models falling short at this point. It's that it's too good. So it's more like I think that they want to slow it down, because if we keep pushing in that direction, we're pushing towards AIs that are so smart that we can't understand them. And if we get to that point, that's not positive for us. So I think that the controversy is more about like slowing things down and controlling everything in a more functional way. But like whatever it was that they have, I don't doubt that it could have had serious implications on society. So, or like even in the sense that overall, it feels like this year OpenAI has been a little more fast and loose about how they do things compared to other like safety focused companies. Like I'd say Google has been a lot slower on purpose, like and Claude as well, because GPT seems like it's self-aware and has a lot of factors going on with it that are just like I don't know. I just don't feel like I don't see the thoroughness in testing that I'm seeing, or the restrictions that are showing that testing's happening. I just don't see that happening as much on the OpenAI side. But like with what's happening in like everyone's this week is now all complaining about how it's not performing as well. Yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of theories about what might be going on there, but it could speak to like larger implications of things underneath this system that even OpenAI isn't 100% aware of yet. Because it feels like every time people say anything about or like question anything about the models, we don't get a lot of like, concrete information back. And obviously it's proprietary, but I think it's also maybe just because they're like watching it happen at the same time we're watching it happen. Like they didn't know like 2 weeks ago that everyone was going to be complaining about this, I would imagine. So it's interesting.
Cool. And yeah, one thing that I didn't understand about the concept, how the A search works, like without the key learning, because for me it's like, okay, like the A search, like they find the best route, but how you find like the best route without try and error? So I'm thinking about like in the Mario system, like just like to make it like clearer for me, like when the Mario like starts the phase, like he doesn't know all the possible paths, right? So like how does like the A works like without the Q?
Well, I think that's the idea, is that those things, they kind of have to pair together in these models, but they are separate pieces. So one is just like optimal path from beginning like of the level to the end. So if he just runs to the right and just tries to not hit anything and gets the flag, technically he's won the level, but he hasn't like gotten the most coins or the most power-ups or whatever, right? So I think like when you're what they're doing is they set the AI to just sort of like train itself and go through iterations and iterations and iterations, and then that builds both the A search and the Q learning model. Like it's all the same build. If you were to try to isolate those, I don't think you can isolate those in a Mario game example, but maybe like Pong, or I mean, I would think of it as more like if you're in a like if you're playing Frogger, and you know that like technically the quickest path across is just to go straight from like you start in the center and you just want to get to the other side. So the shortest path is technically just to go across, right? But then you have to think about the cars. So the shortest path algorithm would tell you to just go straight, but then the Q star part of the algorithm is telling you, but there's cars, so you actually should go over here. Does that make sense?
Okay. So yeah. So like the okay, it starts with the E, because like the E is going to have like the default as a straight line.
Yeah.
But
so like where are we going?
Yeah. Okay. But as things start like falling apart, like with the errors, the A start adjusting the route.
Yes. And then that maximizes the Q value, which is the state. So like if you get hit by a car every time you go straight and you go one to the right and then you make it to the second one, then you know that like you should always go one over and then start. So yeah. Cool. Maybe Frogger is a better example for this. I just really liked the Mario ones because people had already built Q models on them. But cool. Yeah, it is a little confusing because it's more. I'm surprised because even as I was going through it, I'm like, we didn't really give Mario enough credit, because it's a pretty complicated game, even though it's not like people didn't love it, but I'm just saying like I just never realized like how much was going on from like a machine perspective, So yeah. I've never built video games before, but yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about too.
Yeah, it's very engaging, and yeah. And yeah, one thing I don't know, like, do you know that Q stars work in chess?
It's not like So to back it up, QStar is a theoretical leaked paper name. So that's just the name of a leaked paper concept that was from OpenAI. We don't know if it's real, but because Amazon, like a week later, put out a new system after they bought Anthropic, which is Claude, they put out a new system called Amazon's Q. I'm pretty sure that it is accurate. So we are basing that, like when we're Q learning is its own concept. Amazon has a thing that they're calling Q. Q star is the rumored name of something we think is GPT-5, but we don't know. So like, just to explain that, but Q star is the thing that everybody was directly talking about as a concept when the controversy was going out. So now, because of the other data points that I mentioned with Amazon and stuff, we can kind of like assume that that's probably where things are actually going.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because like in chess, like the best chess player in the world is a machine. He's like way better than the best player, which is like way better than the rest of us. I think like the machine play with the best player in the world, like without a piece, without a horse, and won massively. And I'm thinking that, you know, like if they can go like even further than that.
Yeah, I mean, and anytime when you're thinking about these systems, just think of it as like our brains only have like X capacity in them. There's like a physical limitation of space, and computers have no physical limitation of space on brain power. So like automatically, if you increase like how big your brain is, you're gonna be smarter. So like if an AI's brain can be like the size of a couple stadiums compared to a person, you know, that's pretty much gonna be the result, no matter what system we go in, I think. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out more, I think, in like the physical world, if they end up like actually getting robots out and stuff. Because so far, all the car systems that they've put out for robot, like AI systems, have been like running over children and not effective. And they've had to get rolled back because they're like not able to do their jobs. So it might be a while before we see anything practical in like physical world. But I think that'll be like, oh, well, actually, there's a ping pong AI robot player right now, I think. That's maybe one of the first examples. And yeah, it's kicking everybody's butts because, you know.
You should send me the video of a AI playing ping pong, because they say that moving physically, it's like super impossible.
It was on TikTok. I don't know if I have the link right now, but ping pong AI. Oh, here you go. So there's one for the chat. I can share as well.
Cool.
Yeah, it's got these guys for everyone we were showing. There is a robot playing ping pong and being saucy and swaggy about it too. But I actually think that this might be not real. Because I'm pretty sure that this is a video of like a real person. So maybe that none of these are real so far, but I don't know, because I did see Japan. I've confirmed that Japan is working on like real Gundams, which are like giant transformer robots. Like that's actually happening. And I know China's working on their like AI, like humanoid factories, right? So we don't know, but I'm sure that like that, although that video is fake, it looks like it probably won't be in a couple of years, you know?
Yeah. Okay. That was like super cool.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I had a really good time, and I hope I didn't like lose anybody too much on the technical stuff. We definitely wanted to sort of give people a little bit more of a challenge on the mental side of things today, but then hopefully by tying it back to things that are a little bit more relatable, it's still everyone was able to walk away with some good lessons from this. So appreciate you so much for having me by.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right.
Well, so yeah, I'll just say goodbye here. Bye.
All right, sounds
Yeah.
good. Thank you everyone for having me.